The Rotel RX-1203 is outdoors. I'm outdoors. The animals are outdoors. What kind of a restoration is this anyway? You may be asking, Chris, what are you doing? Well, I'm restoring another receiver. So let's get started. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my Rotel RX-1203 receiver. I've never owned a Rotel receiver. I have a preamp, I do have a power amp, but I've never owned one of these big receivers. And I don't even remember seeing them back in the day. Maybe you guys could write down below, did you have a dealer that sold Rotel around you? I didn't. I had several stereo shops in my small city, half a dozen or so, and they carried all the normal brands, you know, the Pioneers and the Marances and Sansuis, but I never saw Rotel. At least I don't remember it. But I'll tell you, this is a very attractive receiver, and I have to tell you, I've always wanted one, and I was lucky enough to come upon one. I'm going to bring that RX-1203 out here also. Well, looks like it. There goes Charlie. He's going to go out and get in the pictures, I guess. But I'm going to bring out my little hydraulic cart just to show you how I take pictures outdoors. You know, you just have a little foot pump here that you pump it up, and then there's a handle here to release. So it works out pretty good for moving heavy stereo equipment. So I moved the RX-1203 out to a different spot of the deck here. So as I said, this is just as I received it. It's in pretty nice shape. It's not perfect by any means. It's got a few nicks here and there on it, but most of them do, right? Got some helpers out here, you can probably see. Here's the top of the unit. Again, got a few scrapes in it, nothing horrible. Now the back of the unit, it looks pretty barren, doesn't it? It's got the AM/FM antenna inputs. It's got a few AC outlets. And you're thinking, well, where are all the RCA inputs? They're over here on the side of the unit. All the RCA inputs. Your speaker inputs, A and B, are over here on the other side of the unit. So this Rotel RX-1203 has all the standard inputs that you'd expect on a receiver with 120 watts per channel. Back in the late 70s, this receiver came out in 1977. Has bass and treble with 2 turnover frequencies for each, high and low filter, balance of course, and loudness, and of course it has the 2 tape inputs along with AM/FM and 2 phono inputs and an auxiliary. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to work on this. It is fun just to bring it outside. You know, take a look at it out here. Looking at it in the sun, you just don't get any better lighting than this, right? And I haven't cleaned it up at all. I haven't gone and done anything to it at all, other than bring it out here and take some pictures of it. So it's going to be, as I said, exciting to get started on it. I'm going to go in there and change those electrolytic capacitors that I always change out. Hopefully I don't run into any issues, and it's going to take a few days. You know, these projects do. It's going to be a pretty big project, but it'll be a fun project. I enjoy doing this, as you guys know. So I thought it was a little bit, you know, it'd be a little bit fun to get out here and get outside a little bit. It's nice weather here in Florida in February. So I hope you enjoyed me coming outside here and giving you some pictures and showing you how I move equipment around a little bit and just talking to you kind of face to face, right? I don't usually do that because frankly, I'm not the star here, right? My equipment is. So, you know, what are you gaining? You know, when I sit here and look in the camera and talk to you all the time. But I thought I would do that a little bit this time. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up out here. And I'm going to get inside and I'm going to get started on this restoration of this Rotel RX-1203. Hope you enjoy it. As you guys know, one of the first things I do is just take a look at the unit. I've got the top cover off. Just look around. Everything looks original. Doesn't look like anybody's been in here, at least no time recently anyway. So it looks clean, looks good. Doesn't look like there's any issues here. Okay, now it's time to take off the bottom cover and see if we've got any issues under there. It's always a good idea to do this if you don't know the history of these units, and most of the time you're not going to know. The people who had them, they had them, and you know, you're just not going to know what their issue is, if they have any. You know, who knows what's under here, you know? And you can save yourself a lot of issues down the road if you just take a look sometimes. Got the bottom cover off on the RX-1203. Just take a look. Once again, always a good idea. Take a few minutes, take a look. I'm going to be restoring this unit anyway, so these covers have to come off anyway for me to get in there and to clean the controls and to change out those old electrolytic capacitors and anything else that may be bad. There's different ways to approach a restoration. You know, many times there's no right, no wrong. I kind of look under this unit and I think, well, maybe I could get these the drivers and the power amp assemblies done. That's these guys right here at the back of the unit. I think, well, maybe I could do those. And I move over to like the front of the unit, and really I'm going to have to remove the knobs, the faceplate, to get to the preamp board here. This faceplate and these knobs. And many times too, I'll take off the knobs and the faceplate early on just to get them out of harm's way. So there's no way I can hit it with a screwdriver or hit it with a soldering iron, or who knows, things happen, right? So get those knobs off, get them cleaned up, get that faceplate off, get it cleaned up. You got to do that anyway. Then that's out of the way. So when you start the restoration on the rest of this unit, you don't have to worry about that, and you won't put any more marks than it has already in it. I've mentioned this before in some of my other videos, but generally speaking, it's easier to get the knobs off. Anybody that's got an Allen head screw in it, some of the knobs do, some of them don't, but any of the Allen head screws come out easier from the bottom. And also, when I say the bottom, I've got the unit on its side right now. So these holes where I'm going to put my Allen wrench are right here at the bottom. And what that also does, the main thing, you could get to these if this were sitting at another angle, just turn them, right? But you've got the hole coming out with just a little bit of faceplate. So if you slip with your Allen wrench or what have you, you're not going to mar that faceplate. But if you come up on the faceplate, you're really asking for it. If you come up here on the faceplate side, you slip, you know, you're going to mar this. And ask me how I know that can happen. Stay here with it on its side and go ahead and get all those knobs taken off down here. It's just so much easier to do. And if you slip, you've got a lot less chance of marring anything here in the front. Go ahead and get started with that. I've mentioned this before too, but you can get by with some cheap tools, but don't buy the cheapest hex tool set you can get. You don't have to go out and spend hundreds of dollars, don't get me wrong, but just don't buy the El Cheapo $2-3 sets. A cheap set of hex tools will easily strip those little screws in one of these knobs, and believe me, you do not want to be drilling those out if you can help it. So get yourself a good hex set. That's very important. You can get by with a cheap screwdriver maybe, but not with a dirt cheap hex set. So I'm just going to show one here. They all come out the same way. I haven't tried any of these yet, but we're going to try one of these and just see what happens. First, try the long side of this tool first. This happens to be the balance control, and so I'm going to hold it in place, and then I'm going to try to turn this guy. You want to push pretty good. Make sure that that hex tool is down in that screw good, and then we're going to turn it counterclockwise, and let's see what happens. So here we go. Oh, he went easy. This little hex screw is holding against that shaft that's right there, but you can see that just came out real easy. And so I'll put him aside and I'll work on the other ones. Here's the function. We'll get him. Yeah, he came easy. And then we've got the volume control. So let's, and again, very easy. Now we've got a couple more down here near the bottom. This is the treble control. And again, boy, he went very easy. He was a little stiffer, but not much. That's the bass control. Now we've got the tuner up here. We've got one more to get here. I think he's only got one. Yeah, he's got one. And the tuner knob came off just as easy as the other ones. So we got all of those off. Now we just have these ones that are just pushed on, and they'll pull right off the rest of the controls. Usually the best way to get these off are just to get your fingers as close to the faceplate as you can, because some of these are stuck sometimes too, and they don't come off very easy, but you get a little more leverage, you know what I mean? You get in there and you grip pretty good and you can pull it. Okay, I'm going to just go ahead and pull off the rest of these. Let's see how they come off. Oh yeah, very easy. Another very easy. Very easy. Very easy. Very easy, very easy. Oh boy. Very easy, very easy. And very easy. Now, I'll tell you, this is nice. This is not the norm. Sometimes after these things have been on there 40, 50 years, they're not crazy about coming off. But in this unit's case, boy, those controls came off as easy as they come off. That was very easy. So I know the next unit I get a hold of, I'll be fighting with it. But for this one, it was quite easy. So now I can go ahead and remove the faceplate from the unit. Now I'll do that with the unit. I'll bring the unit flat down, but first what I'll do, there's 3 screws at the bottom of this faceplate. There's one up here, there's one here in the center, and there's one down here on the other end. While this is on its side, great time to remove those, right? A lot better than having it flat down on the table, and I'd be down on the floor looking under it, right? Trying to get to it. All right, now that we got the knobs off the front, and I removed those 3 screws from the bottom, we'll bring the unit back down flat, and I'll be able to remove the screws at the top and hopefully have this faceplate come off. So now I've got it back flat, and it looks like what I thought it probably would be. You've got 3 screws here on the top, just like you had on the bottom. So let me go ahead and remove those. You just take this slow though, and all the controls on the front should be at the center position. You know, you don't want like one of your switches up or down. You want them all straight so it'll come right straight off. I don't think, just go very slow though. Yeah, and she just came off in my hand. Whether you saw that or not, I'm not sure, but there she is. She's right off. So that's good. And I can tell you, we got plenty of cleaning up to do back here and within the faceplate itself. But now, see, I can take this faceplate and get it the heck out of the room, right? I can take it, go clean it, just move it, you know, get it out of here. So something, you know, you can't have an accident with it. Now I've got the faceplate off. You can see there's a good amount of crud behind here. Not a shocker, right? I mean, you know how crud gets everywhere. And I'm sure this faceplate has not been off in 45 years. So what do you expect, right? Just get in there and wipe it up, clean it up, and it's not a big deal. Take a few minutes and clean it up, and nobody will have to do this again for a long time, most likely. I'm about ready to get started here on the restoration. I'm going to take a look at everything again, make sure I understand what I'm getting into before I start. Now I have my computer monitor right next to where I'll be working on this 1203. So that's how I do it. It makes it pretty easy. For me anyway. I don't have to really print out things usually, and I can usually roll my chair over to here and then back over to here if I have any questions about something on the schematic. And before I start the restoration on this unit, I want to power it up one more time to make sure that it's working, because now I've had the top cover, the bottom cover, both of those removed. I've had the unit up on its side. I've messed around with it a little bit, and I just want to make sure that everything's still operating. All right, I've got her plugged in, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the power switch. Well, I heard the relay go. I don't know if you guys could. And it seems to be working fine. We've got both the left and right channel working well, and it sounds good. So I think we can go ahead and start here and start the restoration on the unit. But you always want to make sure you've got a known starting point like this. I checked it out, while I had it all assembled before I started all this, and it powered up and seemed to be working. But sometimes when you do something, when you start working on it, shake something loose or something happens that you don't know about, and then I'm going to be in there and I'm going to be restoring everything. Now I'm going to really start moving things around. And so this gives me a good feeling it was working before I started. So if I have an issue as I start the restoration and it's not working properly, I know it's something that I did. Okay, I'm about ready to get started here on the restoration. I'm going to take a look at everything again, make sure I understand what I'm getting into before I start. And in this unit's case, everything is point-to-point wiring. None of these modules will just pull out from the chassis, which sometimes makes it quite nice, right? You can just pull them out and take them right to the workbench. In this unit's case, everything is wrapped to another assembly. From the power supply to the power amp assemblies back here, up to the preamp here. So what I'm going to do, and what I can probably do, and what will work out, is most of these tie wraps will have to be cut. And this is going to give me some slack in the unit. There's no stenciling on this preamp board, meaning you can see capacitors here, you can see transistors, you can see resistors, you can see all the components, but normally you would have stenciling. And like here, there'd be some designation, like for a capacitor, it's usually a C. And you look at a schematic and it say C503, and they'd show you where that is. In this unit's case, there is no stenciling. And so that makes it a little bit, you got to be a little more careful when you're removing components, that you know what you're taking out and you know where they go back in. Also, this unit has tantalum capacitors, and those will need to be replaced also. So the tantalum capacitors are these little blue capacitors. They're polarized. They have a plus and minus just like an electrolytic capacitor has. Because there's no stenciling on this preamp board, you have to be just kind of careful here because there's no stenciling, and you got to make sure that you put back in the proper component orientated correctly. Just like on an electrolytic, you don't want to get those backwards. So I'm going to go ahead and work on this preamp assembly at the front of the RX-1203 first, and do the work I have to do there with those tantalum capacitors as well as the electrolytics that I'm going to be changing out. Now I'm going to loosen preamp up. I ended up removing the RCA jack cover from the side of the receiver for a couple different reasons. One, I'll be able to get in there and clean up these RCA jacks now. You can see they're just hanging loose. And sometimes I just bring what I can right up to the garage sink. Like here's that cover that I removed. And just easy to bring it right out in the sink and go ahead and wash it with the cat. I think we're just about there. I think because once I get this past this little threshold here, I'm going to be good to go, because this is going to unfold this way for me. And then I'll have to use something to prop this up, but that's going to make it a lot easier for me to work on and change out the components. Much easier to work on it outside the chassis. Now with the preamp board loose, it's just going to be so much easier to work on this. I'll move the chassis a little bit. I'll turn it kind of back this way some, and this way I can get to this side, the component side, easy enough, and I'll be able to get over here to the solder side easy enough, at least for most of them. There may be a couple in here that are more difficult to get at, but for the most part, I think I can get at them. And now all the controls are exposed, so I'll be able to use my deoxit on those quite easily. They'll be right out here, and I'll be able to get that deoxit into the switches and into the pots instead of all over the place. So it's just easier to work on this particular assembly with it removed outside of the chassis. So now I'm able to deox these controls quite easily. I'll use both Deoxit D5 and Fader F5 spray for these controls. You can use whatever product you like. That's what I use, that's what I'm used to, so that's what I'll use in this project. As you can tell, it's so easy now to get to everything. The openings to clean these properly are mounted down here almost right next to the circuit board. So if this were in this unit, you're just not going to get to it. You're going to spray it all over the place. You're going to get it everywhere but the control. Here's an example of why many times you need to disassemble a unit to get this deoxit into a control the way you should. This is the base control on this RX-1203. You know, this assembly sits obviously inside the chassis here, and there is no way to get deoxit to the bottom of this control, which is where you've got to get it, to get the deoxit up into the control. There's a little slit, a 32nd of an inch, a 16th of an inch, that's just on the other side of these three pins. If you could see the other side of this, the slit starts about there and ends about there. And so there is no way, if this is in the unit, that you're going to get this into there to clean that control. You're just not. It's not going to happen. You might think it's going to happen. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to do what I'm doing. And I don't know if you can see very well the hook on this straw. I've got all different kinds of deoxit, but I've got all different kinds of straws too. Like this guy here is a straight one, and I can get it into most places. But here, a straight straw just isn't going to work for you. You might be able to try to hook it around the corner here, but you know, it's going to be very, very difficult. So just on the other side of this little red plate with these three pins from this base control is where I need to spray. So I can take my hand and kind of just get her shoved in there. Can you see, even with this out, right? I'm having to barely maneuver it to get it in to that side. Now, one good thing about deoxit, this stuff comes out under pressure. You don't need much. You don't need much. Even if you don't get the majority of it up in the switch, you're going to get enough of it. So I got her pulled around here, and I got it pushed right up against this switch right here against these pins, and I'm going to give it a spray. And you actually, so you got to set the can. Now see right there, I could tell I got mostly air because the can, see these cans won't spray when they're horizontal like that. You've got to get them vertical. So I got to stand this can up a little bit, Now, see, I think you heard that and maybe even saw some of the deoxit come down out of the bottom. But that's good. As I said, we don't need much up in there, but we do need some. Now, we've got to do that one more time, right? The switch is 2 parts, so we got to go over here and get, whether you can see that or not, I don't know, but I've got them right on the other side there, and I'm just going to, again, get the can vertical and spray. And I heard it, and I saw it, and I guarantee you, I got some deoxit up inside that switch. And this is the bass. This one up here is the treble, and I can feel it already. Oh my God. I mean, it is so much freer now. You kind of think, this is what I'm talking about a lot of times when I say things are broke per se or aren't working like new, and you don't even realize it. Let's see what the treble, oh my God. The treble, it feels like somebody's got the brakes on the treble up here now. This bass, oh, it turns so easily, even without the knob. See, this would have a knob on it, right? And it'd be a lot easier to turn. This one up here, my treble, which is the same control as the bass. Oh, you just wouldn't believe the difference. You wouldn't. Somebody could close your eyes, put your finger on it, and you'd know which one this was. And the treble, I'm having to really squeeze it to turn it. Did it work? Yeah, it worked. Did it work like new? No, but it will now. And as I've mentioned before, here we go, right? A lot of times I put the knob on. I'm trying to show you this, but I'll put the knob on. Here, it makes it a lot easier to turn, right? Here, I'll put the knob on just to show you. And you don't have to put it on any special way, right? It just gives you a lot better leverage. And if you're going to turn this 30, 40, 50 times, right, it's probably nice to have the knob on there. So we'll put the knob on there temporarily. And, oh my God, this is like, I mean, it's turning like butter. I mean, it really is. I mean, what a difference. And just from 40, 45 years of corrosion, dust, dirt, believable the difference. If you felt this, you'd think, holy smokes, moves just like butter, really does. And this one up here, not so much, but it'll move like butter too as soon as we get the deoxit into it. And you think, well, that's a lot of trouble. It's a lot of trouble to do this. Obviously, it's not so much trouble now because I was going to change all the electrolytic capacitors in this board. But even if I wasn't, it's well worth doing it because this is going to last you a lifetime by doing this. This is going to last a lifetime. It's not going to, you're not going to have to get back in here in a month or a year or even 10. This is going to last you, another 30, 40, 50 years right here, just cleaning these controls up. So, yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. This treble control is so much more stiff. And this bass one was just like the treble until you've got the deoxit in it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm doing it now. But, that 30, 40, 50 times back and forth seems ridiculous. But just do it and you won't have to ever get in here again to do this. Okay, I'm about ready to get started here with the capacitor replacement and the preamp assembly. As I mentioned before, I use a desoldering tool, which makes this job so much easier. A Hakko FR301. They're a great tool, and if you do a lot of these projects, you will have a tool like that because it makes it just so much easier. So what I do, I don't have a build list. Like sometimes people will ask me, well, can I have your build list for your, last project? I don't have one because I keep all the capacitors in stock, or at least the majority of them I have. The only ones I don't normally have are the large filter capacitors. There's just so many diameters. There's so many different size capacitors that it's impossible to keep those around. But I keep a supply of pretty much everything I need. It just makes it so much easier than try to go through here and make a build list. Oh man, you got to take it all apart, then you got to figure out what's in it, then you've got to order it, then you've got to wait. So I buy capacitors usually in 10s, sometimes even in 25s. And the reason for that is because of the cost of them. They are much less expensive when you buy them in bulk, and I use them. So I buy them in 10s, I buy them in 25s, and also, I don't know what it's worth to you guys for the convenience. I like opening a box up, getting out a bag, and having it all ready to go. I can just get to work, and I don't have to go in there and figure out what I need, order what I need. Then inevitably, if you're ordering 50 or 75 capacitors, what's going to happen? You're going to miss a couple. Then you get your order and you're missing a couple capacitors. Well, that really stinks. It would for me anyway. So it's well worth having some extras on hand to start projects like this. Well, I've been going along here. I've got a few of the electrolytics changed out. I use all different brands. I use Panasonics, I use Nichicon, Elna, you name it. There's a lot of good ones. Just if you guys are doing a restoration, just buy a name brand. I don't know if anyone's any better than anyone else, but just again, don't buy the El Cheapos. Go ahead and spend a couple extra pennies for name brand. All right. I've gotten all the capacitors changed out in the preamp assembly, and I'm about ready to reinstall it. I'll take a look one more time at my work, make sure it looks okay, and then I'm going to reinstall the preamp. Whenever doing a large project, you should work it in sections. At least I think you should. So I've gone ahead and reinstalled the preamp back in, and it's always a good idea to power it up instead of assuming it works, and then you work on another assembly and then another, and before you know it, you've worked on 4 or 5 and then it's not working. Something's wrong and you don't know where to look. So it's just better to go ahead and check your work before you go on. I had to remove the tuning string when I was working on the preamp. I know there'll be some lady in Japan watching this laughing at me. I can do this in probably about 30 seconds. Do it a full 3 turns. Do it 2.5 turns. You know, I've got a string diagram here because I've got to get this tuning string back on. And I got this one back on. Took me about 10 minutes or so. I've struggled with them for longer than that sometimes, but this one wasn't too complicated, so even I could get it back on okay. So I've still got the face plate off, of course, because I'm going to continue to work on the unit, but I've got the preamp back in and everything reassembled, and now I'm going to give it a shot and see if she'll power up and see if the receiver's still operating. Alright, we're ready to go here, so I'm going to go ahead and flick the power switch here, and let's see what happens. Well, I heard the speaker relay, so that's always a nice sound to hear. And let's see what we got. Well, we got some static. That's good. Sounds like both channels are static. Well, it sounds like it's working, that's for sure. Sounds like Well, it looks like we can tune in FM fine, and I can hear that both the left and the right channel are working. I don't leave it on the music very long, so I don't get gigged for some kind of a copyright issue, but I'm going to go ahead and check it a little bit closer here and make sure everything's all right before I continue on. In the next video, I'll show you the restoration of the phono amplifier and equalizer board. I'll also be rebuilding the regulated power supply and protection assembly, along with working on the power amplifier assemblies in this RX-1203. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're looking forward to my next video. And I'd just like to thank everybody for watching, and for you non-subscribers, if you like this video and you'd like to see more, please subscribe. And to my present subscribers, as always, thank you so much. Y'all have a good day.